And actually, don't take a seat, come here. Maybe you sit here in the middle. Well, one by one. So please take a seat. And Dan, maybe you can follow as well on the first one over there. I'm doing this just because of the questions that I have for you. So, Kate, please also take a seat next to Dan. And I would like to, first of all, thank all of you for being here and for all of your insightful presentations. Do you agree that they were very insightful presentations? Can we give a round of applause? Yeah? Amazing. And we have a very special guest. Yes, sorry, James, but I'm going to do it like this. Who is part of the Bath University. And James Hort, please come here on the last seat. Thank you very much for being here. So James is building controls engineer from Bath University. He represents the client and operational perspective, working within a live university environment. His role focuses on the implementation and management of building systems across the campus, bringing insight into real-world constraints, user needs, and the importance of solutions that are practical, adaptable, and effective in daily use. So thank you very much for being here. Another round of applause. Thank you. So we need to be very good with time, guys. So let's try to make this work because we're a little bit late. So we talk a lot about improving education, but what if the spaces themselves are part of the problem? So let's say that this is our core part of the discussion. And we have created a couple of questions for all of you. So I will start with a very short one just to break the ice on this topic. And in one sentence, very precise, I would like each of you, and I will start with you, Dan, what is the biggest thing we are still getting wrong in learning environments today? And it can be one word, 2 words, a sentence, but yeah, fire. Oh, so we have opened the, yeah, perfect. Yes, the mics are on. Sorry, guys, it was the thing that I had to remember. Perfect, thank you for turning them on.
I think we're just designing to code. We're not thinking of people, we're designing for numbers.
Kate, what's your take?
I don't think we're really appreciating how people experience it, particularly in noise. I know lighting is why we're here, but I think noise is one of the biggest aspects we see in feedback.
Absolutely. Thet, what about you?
I think that our thinking of lighting and controls is really outdated. We're still seeing lighting and controls as a utility, as a percentage of an energy bill, where modern thinking should be now, it's a driver for net zero and to improve the quality of environments.
And James?
We lack design. We're just changing like for like without adding the controls. Still keeping manual switches. It doesn't work. Like LED lights are too bright, and that's where we're falling over.
Thank you. So, since we are getting into the problem, the first part of these questions is why current spaces fail. And I will start with you, Dan. We know lighting affects focus and well-being, so why is it still not treated as a priority in educational projects?
I think it's because, as I said before, it's seen as a utility. It's seen as a, just like water or air, it's just a thing that we have to have, a necessary evil, rather than actually a beneficial contributor to the actual installation and the experience. So we need to flip that side away. We just, James has just mentioned, we're treating it as a like-for-like replacement. But actually, who says it was right the first time round? And who says we're putting back what is an equivalent? It needs to be better controlled, completely agree. But actually, should we be thinking about the space completely? Is the space a box that needs to be lit the same? Or does it actually need to think about how this could be a different type of space from what it really needs to be, and adaptable? Yeah.
Absolutely. Kate, from your research and teaching experience, when does a learning space actually start working against the people using it?
I think it's when they're trying to switch between these different activities and also different learning spaces, like Dan alluded to, having different learners doing a particular task in a different space. They're going to need different lighting to support that, whether that's seeing how somebody's expressing their emotion or their speech and having that communication. I think it's having those different spaces available to them to support that.
Yeah, perfect. And James, you're going to close this round. From the client side, what frustrates you, and you need to be honest, most about how these spaces are currently designed or delivered? So give us their pure feedback.
Pure feedback. Most designs are rigid. They're designed at quite an early stage. They're installed to what the client at the time thinks they needed or wanted. But when it comes to handover, the client's decided, actually, I'm not going to use that for a teaching room. I'm going to have it as an office. So all the lighting is set up for a teaching space, not an office. So all the lux levels are wrong. It's just frustrating. Yeah, that's the frustration. Change of views from concept to...
That's a very good point. Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. Thet, we talk about collaboration all the time. Well, no, sorry, my mistake. That's for Kate. Guys, tired, yeah. So, Kate, we talk about collaboration all the time, but where does it actually break down in real projects?
I think it's going back to what James just alluded to. It's the handover process of understanding how something is used in that moment and the adaptation over time. If you don't have an entire stream supporting you behind that of the data, the schematics, what it's being used for, where, why, articulated and communicated well, then you just get fragmented data everywhere and you're left with this mess, whether it be the controllers in a box or it's no information and it's piecemeal everywhere.
I love how the answers are getting connected. Yeah, we're getting there. So, Thet, now it's correct. Let's be honest, controls often get blamed. When do controls actually become part of the problem? Also, be honest.
Yeah, controls is actually probably the first company to get, or manufacturer to get blamed. But controls is part of the problem when it's thought of about too late, if it's kind of bolted on at the end. And also if the design or the implementation is compromised from the intent. So a few ways this happens. Value engineering. So, you know, that by definition, it's a systematic removal of value, but you're still expected to deliver the same outcome and the same specification, which is very challenging, conflicting even. And if the value engineering is brutal, then you're getting like a shadow of what it should be intended to. Another way is if the user experience is really bad, really poor. So I think, Dan, you said it, that you know, good lighting you shouldn't even notice, right? So if you're getting annoyed by the lighting or you don't know how to use it, the automation is wrong, it's too complicated, then it's a really poor experience and the lighting gets blamed, the control systems get blamed, but it's probably been designed like that and never changed over time. And then lastly, if controls is thought of, or lighting is thought of as a silo. So, you know, modern design should be now thinking about a building as a solution, not just lighting, BMS, security, fire. You should be collectively trying to optimize and work towards the same goal.
Yeah, excellent. Dan, where do you see the biggest disconnect between design intention and what actually gets delivered?
The biggest disconnect, I guess, it's continuity, isn't it? Really, somewhere down the line. I think it's that design. I think you've both alluded to it around, you know, design intent that's delivered at and developed at REBA 2 and REBA 3. If it then goes design and build and the specification is not tight enough, or you're not captured it well enough, or that even if it then goes through and it's not in the specification delivered through to site, and the strength and robustness of site presence and activities to get it all the way through to change to handover, I think The biggest disconnect is usually in communication, and the communication is capturing A, have we got the brief, and B, have we passed that on. That's really what the biggest disconnection is.
Excellent. Yeah, communication is the most important thing on everything, really. Thank you. We get into the reality check chapter of the questions, what actually works. And going to James, on a live campus, what actually defines a good space for you?
Good space for me. Somewhere that's safe, it's adaptive, very flexible, and encourages the students and people using the space to use it, rather than walk away, go, oh, it's too bright, it's too dark. Yeah.
Perfect. And Thet, from your perspective, what is a good control strategy enables in practice?
Good control strategy is long-term thinking. You think you're going to have to live with that system for at least 10 years. The space is not going to be the same in 10 years' time as it is in day one. So it needs to be adaptable. It needs to have long-term thought, not this kind of bolt-on afterwards. And then it needs to serve the user and be task-focused as well. And this balance of sustainability, net zero versus people-centric thinking, I think you need to get that balance right. It's very difficult, very challenging, lots of pressures, but that's something that we need to get over from a design all the way to specification through to operational life.
Excellent. And Kate, if we want spaces that truly support learning, what is one thing we need to start doing differently? Many things, but one we want you to say.
I'm going to go for commissioning. It seems to stem from what we've linked together here. If you commission it and recommission it again for those different changes and adaptable 10-year lifespan of controls, then you're going to at least align better to overlapping that learning and educational experience, aren't you? Whereas if you leave them forget, lose the piece of paper that somebody drawn once, you're a bit further away from that.
Absolutely. Dan, if you had to prioritize, what makes the biggest difference? Design, technology, or collaboration?
Oh, collaboration. I don't think there's a, you can have the best design in the world, or what you think is the best design in the world, but if you've not spoken to anyone, then it may not even meet the brief. So, I think collaboration has got to be the key part of that. Really.
And maybe we could be collaboration and communication together, right? Because
Exactly
it's part of the same. Excellent. So, closing round. Actually, we are doing very well. And while we are getting there, I would like also to ask the audience to think of observations or any question you would like to bring to our amazing speakers. So, on this closing round, I would like really, if we could take some key takeaways and pass them to our audience, but also the people who are going to be watching this. In a short sentence, or a bit longer if you want, we do have a little bit of time, what should every learning environment get right from now on? And maybe we start with the order, like Dan, you're the first. Like as a closing statement, sentence that you would like everyone to take with them.
What we should get right in one, I think we just should think about who we're lighting for and why we're lighting, actually. If we get that right, then everything else will be right. So if you think about the needs of the users, the needs of the learners, the needs of the educators, and you capture that in where you're thinking, and you're thinking about the whole spectrum of those learning environments and their needs, as opposed to what you think will look good or what you think may deliver a solution based on what the code tells you. If you get the full breadth needs right, then we'll create much better spaces for everyone.
Great, excellent. Kate?
It's difficult to follow Dan. Yeah. You know what, I think it's about helping those people that are in there every single day. That perspective of if you are the cleaner cleaning that space, the security, the other people that surround all of those facilities that are often forgotten about, they are part of that space too. So I think you're right around the learner. Yeah, that absolutely needs to be your focus, but there are many other people in that collaboration pool of people to ask.
True. Multidisciplinary, again, another word. Thank you. Thet?
Yeah, going back to my presentation, I think if you focus on the purpose and knowing that the purpose will change throughout the 30-year life of the building, 10-year life of the solution system, focusing on that and then going beyond compliance. Compliance is temporary, and compliance will get stricter over the years. Look at the purpose, look at the people, not the compliance.
Great. And James, you're closing. All the attention to you.
Well, they've pretty much covered everything that you could ever really think of. But you were saying about compliance. Compliance, unfortunately, from us is a massive, massive issue, especially from emergency lighting points of view and things like that. The space has to comply.
Of course.
But it does still need to be flexible, absolutely, and cater for everyone, as you've all said. Absolutely.
Yeah, great insights. Thank you so much. And one last thing is that if we know that learning environments shape how people think and feel and perform, then designing them better is not optional, but essential, right? And I hope everyone agrees. So let's give a big round of applause for our speakers. Thank you. And we have some time for questions or observations or something that you would like to bring to the discussion. And that's really the reason why we are doing this also live, because we want everyone to have this point to make and to bring. So is there anyone who is willing to be the first one? Yeah? Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to give you this mic so you can pass it around. Thank you. You can say your name if you want and then ask the question.
Hello, my name is Jaime. I'm already studying a master's. I'm not going to say which university, but very close to Bath City. The thing is, from my experience studying in these new classrooms, is a very modern building, and I think it was built to reach these net zero objectives. But I think the problem with that is they are pushing too much to reach these requirements. So they are not giving time to try all these sensors, for example. So they are trying to solve everything together. Like, I'm talking about light, energy efficiency, natural ventilation. So I remember in January, like the classroom was closed and everybody inside, so the air quality was very low. So the windows, they were open automatically, so the cold wind was inside. So then the heaters started. the natural light came in, so the artificial lights were like kind of low, and then everybody was freezing. The windows get closed, and then everybody was like, we cannot study in this environment. So I think some buildings are very in the same push to reach this net zero requirements. So they are not giving this maybe 10 years to try, like experiences like, okay, we need to see if it's working, and then how all the sensor, all those controls can work together. So I think it's one of, from my perspective, is one of the problems happening now in educational spaces. So I'm very agree with all of you. So yeah, I think, as I think you mentioned it, like we need to taste it sometimes. Like now we have these twin models, like maybe we can just share the experiences from the users in these twin models, and then test all these sensors, all these controls. And yeah, probably they will work better, I guess.
Have you got a response to that, Kate?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
so we've done a few post-occupancy evaluations in passive house or naturally vented spaces, they're incredibly difficult to get right with those controls and automation. If you know of any that are working well, I'd love to hear it, please. But your experience sounds really tricky, and I think that's when you take away that personal element of control, where you as the student maybe wanted to feel in control of closing the window, and yet a certain amount you needed the natural air to be filtering in because it was too stuffy, and yet all these other knock-on unintended consequences cascaded down into it's too cold and it's dark, why on earth would we study here? Is this really what I paid my money for? Equals let's all move to the cafe and have a nice hot chocolate. It's probably maybe what happened, but it's difficult to control those spaces. I don't think there are many people that have got it right. I don't think there are many places that have written down all the permutations of those scenarios like you've just described. I think having that fed back is very difficult for designers to see that reality faced up with what they've just paid millions of pounds for, and none yet have published it openly in the public space. So that honest feedback loop isn't yet there for them to really embrace what that looks like for the student.
Excellent observation. Thank you for bringing this. Because it's also a matter of, like, from the student perspective, that was great. Is anyone else who would like to make a point? Oh, we have a few more up there. Yeah, can you help pass the mic? Thank you so much.
Hi, Josh from Magazzini. Nice to see you again, James. It's been a while. Just reflecting down on what you said earlier about why is the lighting there. I think it goes back to that age-old point. We talk about human-centric lighting, but all lighting is human-centric because the only reason it's there is for humans, and student experience in these spaces is above everything else. The kind of question I have for all of us is, at the end of the day, when value engineering is discussed and it all comes down to cost, we're educating the people in this room that generally are quite well educated about this topic. How are we all going to get to those real decision makers who are apportioning value to different things, whether it be concrete or steel or flooring or chairs, and how do we get them to understand everything that's being talked about in the room this evening? Because the impact that this has, as you've all kind of discussed, is perhaps greater than anything else. You still need chairs, obviously.
Maybe I'll start on. Thank you. I think, I always start with the phrase whenever I hear value engineering. It's value to whom? You know,
agreed.
What is that value and where does it sit? And James and I had a chat earlier about one value case that we'd had at a different university, I'd say, where understanding and getting into the depth of their traditional procurement strategy over a large-scale LED replacement, should we say, versus and their preferred manufacturer of choice, I'll go with that phrase, and the value that the university had high value for what the product they're getting, high value for what they're getting. They weren't getting good monetary value, but we had a conversation and engagement around looking at the market and what else might be there, and we demonstrated that there was a significant saving, hundreds of thousands of pounds, of moving away from that and sharpening a pencil on there. But similarly, through that process, we also demonstrated a whole cost of ownership value as well, which demonstrated that actually they were on the right path, and they were actually over the long term, and in pre-Ukraine war energy prices, I'll go with, was worth £1 million to them over a 15-year period, which is not to be sniffed at in terms of, and no, it's probably double that now, to be brutally honest. So I think, what is that value? How do you define that value? What's that open conversation with the estates as we move to net zero? Is it embodied carbon? Is it retrofit and refurbishment of the existing assets into a new enclosure where it's appropriate? Is it where you've got a signature architect and a signature building that there's loads of bespoke fittings that we need to think about re-engineering those products? Is it what is the right strategy for every approach to make sure you get the best value? And actually, it's the responsibility of the designers. And I take this is one of the things we've worked on for many years, and I take a lot of pride in. We very rarely have I very rarely have my specifications changed. On my projects within education is because I've worked out what the value is to start with, and I go in armed with the numbers. And when the contractor goes, I could do this, yeah, but we looked at that, and this is why we didn't use them. This is why we've gone this solution. So I can sit there and stand behind with all my soul and say, I've chosen the best product for you. If you can no longer afford that, let's re-establish what the value is. But don't just be going to whoever your contractor is suggesting, because the value is not to you, the value is to them. So I think that's a personal passion statement from me today, but that's, we need to be stronger. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things there. I think good question, Josh. And there's two things. I think the compliance needs to get better. So it's happening. It's so slow. Some countries are better than others. The UK is actually a little bit behind the EU, I think, in the kind of sustainability versus people-centric design perspective. But then I think there's a responsibility for the manufacturers and the specifiers. Things get value engineered out when the value is not understood. So if people doesn't know what the value of a certain function or feature is, it's going to get value engineered out, right? So I wish Dan would do all our specs, because then nothing will get value engineered out, but it's not the reality. And we need to kind of educate as manufacturers what the value is early on, so we protect it later on.
And it's not only the manufacturer's part, it's also like why we are doing those events and those conversations, because it's all about raising awareness. I know we are not solving those problems by just talking about them, but by communicating the value, by bringing more professionals outside of our circle to have those conversations. And I mean, hopefully, all of you guys, you will take one key takeaway today and you will pass it to your colleagues, to a client perhaps, to somebody. We all have this responsibility to raise this awareness and this education. And then, of course, from a manufacturer perspective, again, you also need to show why this is important. Like, we need to start talking about the key things, and also what you are describing, Dan, is like amazing. Like, wish everyone could be getting the responsibility to also do that. For me, it's really the key words that we also discussed a lot today. It was the communication, collaboration, really understanding also the other people that are using. We cannot only talking about the students, we need to also think all the other parties. And then also from the client perspective, again, thinking of if you're supposed to change the use of the space, obviously, the space hasn't been designed according to that. So it's really important to be at this room and having those conversations with different disciplines and bringing different people in the conversation. But we have the responsibility now to take this and pass it on. That's why we are trying to do those events. That's why we are recording. Also, that's why we are always trying, as the Lighting Police, to reach out to companies to host us, that they have this multidisciplinary culture. And with all the different events that we have done, that has been really the priority and the main focus, to bring from acoustics that we had on the previous event to all of the different things that you mentioned, Kate. So, we need to keep pushing. Thank you, Josh, for the question. Is there any other question? Perfect, yes. So let's do those two. Perfect.
Hiya. Just to build on what everyone's saying.
Your name as well?
I'm Ben from the University of Bath.
Perfect, thank you, Ben.
I think the unique thing about universities are people live on campus. It's not just a workplace or an education centre. People live there. They feel an attachment to it. That's clear from our alumni when they leave. We get that back. That is a real challenge, because if it's your house, if it's your lived-in space, you can do what you like. That's fantastic. Make it your own. The real challenge we have is trying to bring a little bit of that to the university, not just in the student accommodation, but in the other spaces. But we've got so many asks. We've got health and safety where we can't move an inch. We're literally bound by rules and regulations there. And we'd love to make spaces darker for people where they want to, but we've got trip hazards, and our fire officer won't let us do it for reasons, and we go round and round about what trumps what. And this conversation just gets more and more complicated the more strands we add to it, whether it's the changes to the fire regulations now and are looking at photometry requirements, which is absolutely nightmarish from a maintenance budget point of view when I have to put my budget hat on, or if I put my safety hat on, or if I put on my accessibility hat. How do we take some of the power back in that and challenge the decisions? It's really challenging with things like the health and safety, because they don't see black and white. They only see shades. They don't see shades of grey. Sorry, they only see black and white. We have a much more complicated palette of things to deal with than just that. I'd love to know what the panel's thoughts are on how we can take that fight to them in getting a successful solution that covers safety and covers fire, covers compliance, as well as makes people happy.
I'm not answering that one. He's the boss.
Well, it's interesting. I guess the challenge is communication. Always comes back to communication, but it's about developing trust and understanding. And how do you bring someone needs to be responsible somewhere, isn't it? And I think that's the point. And it's getting to those individuals to the point that they feel comfortable that the decisions that have been made have appropriately considered all the risks that would be associated with that, and therefore they are comfortable that there is an appropriate solution. And I take this back and say, actually, do remember that there is only one requirement in lighting, or there's two requirements in legislation, that you will have safe and sufficient lighting for an occupied space, and you will have safe and sufficient lighting for emergency lighting. That is your only requirement. Now, how do you define safe and sufficient? That's the challenge that comes. So every other standard below that is guidance. And actually, it's about developing that conversation around, well, what is the actual activity happening here? And what is the actual risk that we're going to have? And how do we actually talk about that? And I bring this from a public realm work where I did lots of work over many years in public realm about working with local authorities that insisted on providing 30 lux across massive squares with one person in the middle of it, and going, come on, there's nothing to trip over in there. To the point where I got them to light an 80-metre water feature with no lighting at all, and got them in the space and say, look, we can turn it on if you want. It went, oh no, there's more enough here. We can dim it down. So some of it's about seeing and believing it. Some of it's about night walks we've talked about creating a common lexicon of what actually that means. And some of it, we talked about earlier, is about just because it says 500 lux in there, for a number of people, that is creating a health and safety nightmare in terms of neurodiversity. And actually, how do you then define that development? So actually, what you're doing is harming your occupants, not supporting them. So let's have a sensible conversation around what is the right delivery mechanism for these spaces. And once you create that framework of conversation, the rest of it falls easily. And that's what I've done with public realm for 20 years. And actually, it's the way we're working with certain universities about how do you then move that forward. But yeah, really interesting question. Not easy to resolve, and particularly around compliance but I'll go the other extreme. And I won't answer the question directly, because I've worked with many other institutions where I'll give a story from many years ago that they said to me, I don't like this automatic emergency lighting testing system. All my lamps are failing. And I said, that's because it's actually been tested. So where do you want to be? Where you need it and it's not there, or actually we're in this position because something really bad happened and it could have been stopped. And while lighting wasn't necessarily the main part of that, we need to all pay our place in a safety conscious world, and we need to do that. But let's find that balance. That's how do we do that. So,
a quick add to Dan's point before we move to the next question. I'd take them to see some benchmark space where they've done it really well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we can be so wrapped up in our own role and responsibility that they haven't seen what good looks like and got that feedback directly from people. And I know what you're talking about, but there are spaces that exist that do that are dimmer, that are really quite unique, that are supportive of neurodiverse people who need to rest, different jet lag, time zones, many other reasons behind that, health-wise, family, who knows. But there are spaces that do that, and we all know those good spaces can exist. It's getting people outside their comfort zone to go and test them and actually see them and get some feedback and ask people. I think we're afraid to ask people what works for them. So getting that trust and confidence will be part of that communication to deliberately explore that with them. And once you've got that, you've unlocked that pathway, so this can actually be a lower cost energy solution that's meeting some of those other needs.
And some of that is about decompartmentizing it as well. I'm just going to, oh, dark space, we'll put that here, but right next to the bright space. So actually the transition doesn't work. So actually, how do you think about it as a whole system? That's what we, cause a control nightmare. But it's yeah.
Excellent. I think let's have one last question. Andy, yes, you put the hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Andy, City of London. I'm just wondering who controls the controls. So, like you're saying, because basically the control should be for task lighting. So, can the actual user, the students, or whatever, do they control the lighting in the area, or is it a central control based on what you think they should be using?
Do you want to do this one?
Yeah, I can maybe we can tag team it, but I think it depends on the space. So if it's a corridor or a public space, you don't really want people to control it on a personal level. So you want general lighting that is more compliant, that's decorative, mixed with decorative. So it's automation in those public spaces. But if it's like a personal space or a meeting room or a pod or something like that, then you want the user to adjust the lighting to what tasks they're doing, whether it's collaboration or joint study or focus time. You want the user to have that controllability. Even if they don't use it, you need to give that kind of choice to them. So if it's, depending on the space type, you need to apply that. There is rules, for example, with CIPC, but then I think we need to go a little bit even beyond that and take a step further. So a space like this, you need control, right? You have different functions, tasks in an auditorium. But in the corridor next to us, you don't need personal control. You get automation. And the better that automation, the more energy you save, the more emissions you'll save. And that allows a bit more kind of design flexibility for the spaces that do need control.
I will add to that, because I do a lot of in-house commissioning for the University of Bath. We would initially do the CIBC, here you go, here's your desk, 500 lux, when you come in your room, light turns on, 500 lux, but then we program that switch so the user can adjust it, dim it up, dim it down, and it will stay there until they leave the room, because we use absence detection quite often in those rooms. So they come in, they have to use the light switch to turn it on, so we don't use presence detection. They set it how they like, but when they leave it will turn off. So we do give, especially in small offices, we do give them the control. Worst case scenario, we actually put a 5-button scene set in there if they struggle with a retractive switch. So they can, scene 1 will be the 500 lux on your desk, scene 2 will be a bit dimmer, etc. So we do give flexibility where we can. Quite often go around, and I even do health checks a month later. How's your lights? Oh, it's brilliant, thank you, and stuff like that. So we at the University of Bath, we do try and be flexible when we commission, because we can do it in-house.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. So I think, because I'm seeing the time and I know that some people need to go for the trains, last thing, before I say thank you, we love social media. So if you like this event and you would like to share it with others in the industry and invite them to come and join the next event, please make sure that you take some pictures and you share with us and you tag us. I would like to say a massive thank you to all of you for being here, for all your insights, for all the discussions. I think that has been very insightful. But also to all of you for being here, to your questions, really to the point, and bringing these conversations to life. I hope you enjoyed being here. I think so, because nobody has left, unless it's the space like this that they cannot really leave. So thank you guys. Please, a big round of applause for everyone. Congratulations. Thank you so much. And now we can enjoy a little bit more drinks until 9. Of course, whoever needs to go, they leave. We need to take a group picture together, the panelists. And you can just ask more questions if you have to. Thank you very much, everyone. And I will need the mic back from wherever it is. You can bring it down. Yeah, I can. Thank you. Thank you very much.